Well, hello there, children. My name is Hamish Finifrock, and I'm coming to you from Mary's Land. You might have heard of it. The year is 1717, and I've been living here for just a little while. But I've decided to come to you tonight to tell you my story of how I came to this great place called Mary's Land. I love it so much. But let's start at the beginning. And I only have so much time to tell you the story. So, here we go. Please travel with me. Oh, but first, I need to ask a favor of you. You need to be in a dark room. A dark room with just one light. Like, if you're looking in one of those things called a computer or a Chromebook or something, that can be your light. But if not, you need a light to look at. So that's number one. And number two, I need you to have a patch on your eye. Like I have a patch here on my eye. But in order to put a patch on your eye, well, you need to have a patch. And if you don't have a patch, it's okay. You can use your hand and cover one of your eyes. So before I go on with my story, let's make sure you're in a dark room because it's a nighttime story. And then let's make sure that you have a patch on your eye, and that could be your hand. Now keep that eye covered. You can keep it open, that's fine. One eye should be looking at the light, and one eye should be covered in darkness. Now I'll explain this to you when I'm done, but do me a favor and keep your eye covered. So once again, my name is Hamish Finifrock, and this is my story. When I was born in the countryside on the edge of the hills of Scotland. Such a beautiful place. I loved my home. I grew up on a farm, and my family was a very proud family, well respected, because you see, we raised sheep. We were sheep herders, or sheep farmers, some people called us. Now, when I was a kid, I knew what my life would be like. I'd live in the mountain outside of Edinburgh, and I'd raise sheep just like my father and my father before him. My father was named Godfrey, and his father was named Fergus Finifrock, and on and on and on. That's what the Finifrock men always did. But here's where my story took a turn. When I was about your age, I was 10, about to turn 11, maybe a little younger than you, I'm not sure. I was told by my father it was time for me to learn how to take the sheep up into the mountains myself, how to herd the sheep. And I thought this would be exciting. I was at that age where I wanted an adventure. Well, I'm going to leave my patch off for a little while, but you keep your patch on, okay? So that night I got all the supplies I needed, everything. I got my warm wool coat, I got my wool socks and my wool hat, and I went out into the mountains with the sheep. You see, we take them up there sometimes for the weekend so they can have a nice full belly of grass, fresh grass from the mountain. That night, up in the mountain, I made myself a fire like this. I lay down by the fire, the sheep were baaing in the distance, and everything was great. And I fell right asleep. Then the strange thing happened. When I was sleeping quietly, not noticing a thing, I felt this drip on the side of my head. And it was just a drip and a drip and a drip, and it smelled kind of funny. So I started opening my eyes, but I was scared at what I might see, and I turned my head and I looked up, and there above my head was these glistening teeth, and this slobber, this drool was coming out, and it was falling on me, and I was horrified, and I jumped up and I ran away as fast as I could. Oh my gosh, it was scary. I'm still scared by it. But after a while, I came to, and I realized, wait a minute, that was a familiar face leaning over me, drooling on me. So I went back to the campfire, and I looked, and sure enough, there she was. Big Bertha, the biggest sheep we have. And she was drooling right on me with her teeth shining. And I went over to talk to her, but suddenly I started shaking, and I started sweating, and I thought, I can't go near her. I'm scared of sheep. Oh my gosh. I hoped it was a bad dream, but I couldn't go back to sleep that night. So first thing the next morning, I took the sheep back home. I washed myself very clean. I put on some new clothes, and I walked out the door. And I wasn't sure what I'd do, but I knew I couldn't go home because I came from a family of sheep farmers, and I was scared as sheep. So I had an idea. I thought I'd go into town and see if I could find another job. Now, got to add a little bit of wood to my fire here. I'll be right back. Be sure to keep your patch on there. There we go. It's a chilly night, but a nice fire keeps a man warm. So when I went into town that night, I didn't know what I'd do, but I knew I was hungry. So I went down to the pub in Edinburgh, along the coastline. It was a town on the sea. And as I sat in the pub, thinking what I could do, what job I could take, could I work here at the pub? Could I be a shoe shiner in town? What could I do? I heard a conversation at the table right next to me. I looked over, and it was a strange looking group. Kind of motley, you might say. But they were having a fine time and laughing and jollying around. And I heard one man had a long black beard. And next to him was a man that was dressed real fancy. And then there was a lady who was kind of in some plain clothes, but pretty lady, no doubt. And I listened to him talk. And the man in the beard was talking to the other man, and he said, "We're pulling out tonight. We need to get on the sea so we can make it to Mary's Land before the cold weather comes." Well, Mary's Land. I had heard about Mary's Land, and I was kind of excited about this. And I thought, I wonder if they'd take me with them. So I went and I asked. And when they looked at me, they all just started laughing, a big, jolly, hearty laugh. And it was really sad, and I felt crushed. And I thought that was my chance to get away from sheep. But anyway, when I went to sit down, I heard them whispering. And the next thing you know, the lady comes over to me and she says, "Hey, young fella, what's your name?" "I'm Hamish." "Hamish, come on over and join us." Well, long story short, they had decided they'd like to take me along. You see, I was a wee lad, and they needed a wee lad, a small fella, for a particular job. And the only rule was, as long as I follow their directions and do what they tell me, then I could travel with them to Mary's Land for free. Well, this was a great deal, and I was definitely going to go. Now, the next part of my story continues on the ship. But a couple things. Keep the patch on your eye, and I'll be right back in just a moment to continue the story on the ship. Well, I'm not actually on the ship, of course, but I want you to imagine it, because this ship was a unique ship. Now, when I got on the ship, there wasn't much for me to do. They said I could help in the kitchen a little bit, and I could help swab the deck some, and that was all fine. I didn't think it was a problem, and for 3 or 4 days we sailed, and everything was great. The men loved to sing, and although they were kind of odd, and they didn't seem to shower much, and the clothes were a little bit raggedy, and the language is a little bit bad, still, it seemed like a jolly good time. And then about the 6th or 7th night in, there they were again. The man in the fancy clothes, the man with the black beard, and the lady in the plain clothes, and they were in a circle whispering. And after they finished, the lady came over to me again and said, "Hamish, tonight, at midnight, we're going to sail up to a Spanish galleon, and we're going to rob the ship. And we need you to do a very important job for me. And here's the job, Hamish. We're going to jump down into this cargo hold. It's a place in the ship where they keep all their valuable items. And you're going to jump in there. It's a small space, and we need a wee lad for this." And I realized that's why they told me I had to agree to it. Because I didn't want to be a... What do you know who they were? Indeed, they were pirates. I should have looked more closely. Some of them had patches on their eyes, just like you should be keeping your eye covered. A couple of them had hooks for hands or pegs in their legs. And they were dirty and smelly and foul-mouthed, but jolly nonetheless. So I thought, okay, don't have to fight. I could jump down in the hole, what the heck. Who knows, maybe nothing would be there. So that night at midnight, everyone got quiet, very serious on the ship, and we sailed up quietly, and we pulled right next to that galleon, and there was nothing happening there. It looked like everyone was asleep. So they put this plank over to the ship, and we started going. And just then, before I went, the lady, she gave me a patch. She said, "Hamish, keep this patch on your eye, and don't take it off until I tell you." that was strange. How was I going to see my way around? But I said I'd do it, so I did it. I put the patch on, went to the ship, and I started looking. I couldn't find the cargo hold at first, and there started being some noise, and some sailors were waking up, so I got a little scared. And that's when the man with the beard came over and said, "Hamish, the cargo hold's right here. I want you to jump in now." And I looked down in the cargo hold, and it was so dark, and on the bottom. You know what I saw in that cargo hold? You never believe. The darkness was overwhelming, but I leapt in anyway, afraid I might not survive. But I landed on something soft that was kind of moving, a familiar smell, and it was making some noise. Do you know what it was? Indeed, it was a cargo full of sheep. I'd never been so scared in my life. But that's okay. That's okay. I'm exaggerating. There were only a few sheep. So once I got my footing and I got steadied, I was about to look around. And that's when the lady, Miss Bonnie, she yelled down to me and she said, "Hamish, don't forget. Take the patch off your eye and put it on the other eye so you can see what's down there." Oh my gosh. I never would have done that. But I followed her directions and I took that patch and I put it on the other eye. And you know what I saw? Well, actually, before I tell you, why don't you do me a favor? You should have this experience too. Right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you in just a moment to take the patch off your eye. But before you do it, I want you to do two things. One, you're going to turn away from the light. And then you're going to keep your hand on your eye and I'll count to 3. And when I count to 3, that's when you switch the patch. Are you ready, mates? Here we go. Turn away from the light. Now let me count. 1, 2, 3. Now switch the patch to the other eye. Look around. Now try it a few times. Can you see better with the eye not covered by a patch? It's called night vision. Now this is what I learned from those pirates. That if you take a patch and you keep it on an eye so your eye's in darkness, your eye will get used to darkness. And after a while you'll be able to see. And if you take that patch off when you're in a dark place, you can see around you. You can see almost everything just like it's light. Now luckily for me, the sheep had wandered off and there was plenty of valuable items in there. So we got off that ship and we sailed the rest of the way to Mary's Land. It was an exciting journey, although I felt a little guilt, I must admit. When we got to Mary's Land, I decided to leave the crew and continue my adventure. Long story short, I don't want to be a pirate and I don't recommend it. But the idea of staying in a dark place for a long enough time, that your eyes can adjust and your pupils can grow large, and you can see at night, is something I never would have known if I hadn't been a pirate. So, if you can see in the darkness, you're now an honorary pirate, part of Blackbeard's crew. Welcome to Mary's Land.